Hi, we're Steve and Audra. Over the past year, we've been converting our Ford Transit to a tiny home on wheels. This week, we're continuing our build and keeping our cost down by using salvaged materials. Despite having to backtrack a bit, figuring out how to build around the crazy angles of the van, and many dropped drill bits and screws, we're making progress. Consider hitting that subscribe button and join us for another van build episode. In our last van build video, we thought we put the cabinet above the bed up for the very last time. But after months of traveling and using it for storage, we had to take it down one more time. We're going to show you why right now.
So we need to take this cabinet down to finish the edge in the very back. Audra wants to run some finished pieces in that area, and we also want to put up a curtain rod.
Replace the one we had.
Yeah, a permanent curtain rod that we can drill in. I believe I've taken out all the screws that hold this up, but she does not want to come down. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, it's stuck right here.
I think what's happening is that the paint is keeping this bad boy up. Maybe a little bit down there where Audra's working, and I think right here, this corner, seems to be the only spot. I can see daylight everywhere else in the seams. Alright, looks pretty good here. Look good on your side.
Yeah. We finally got the cabinet down and started figuring out the next steps.
And they're going to be, so I need about 18 inches worth, and they're going to be about 2 inches wide.
So what we may also have to do is drop this ceiling piece, trim it so that it is about the same width as this piece, with the idea of our finished pieces.
It's going to be like this. You want this to be able to go underneath.
Right.
After measuring to determine the pieces we would need to finish this section, I painted a few pallet pieces, and then we started cutting them to size and figuring out the exact placement of each piece. I attached the pieces with screws, filled in the holes, and touched up the paint. I'm trying to cover up the lines that we used for cutting, see where it's a little bit darker. And then when we cut, it took some of the paint off too, so mixing that up a little bit. So the other curtain rod we used to have was a tension rod, and we'd be driving and we'd go over a big bump and it would just fall. So this will be a nice change to that. Something more permanent and sturdier. This is just another example of an item we've salvaged on trash day. So how are we going to make sure it's evenly spaced?
Gonna do the old-fashioned way and eyeball it.
Nice. I guess there's no checking to see if it's level either. Since we're not even level.
I mean, visually looks to be
Oh,
okay with
from
this,
the bottom
this
lip?
cut piece.
Okay. Okay.
Whew.
And ta-da! Thanks, Meg, for the suggestion. Instead of voila, we're doing ta-da today. So ta-da!
I think it looks pretty good. Looks pretty level. Looks pretty sturdy. I wouldn't do any pull-ups on it, but I think it's going to survive bumpy roads now and be a much more permanent fix.
And for now, same old curtain. It's just a sheet. We'll see if that'll change or not, but it's a nice upgrade, I think. Here we go. Ta-da! So now that we have this finished and the new curtain rod up, now we can start putting things back together, put the cabinet back up, and start finishing the rest of this side of the van.
Push back toward.
We put the cabinets back up, ready to tackle the next step of our build.
All right, looks pretty good here. Look good on your side.
Yeah. Oh. These little pieces are kind of crooked. Oh well.
All right, you just want to drive one of the. Does everything fit if you slide your curtain over?
Yeah. Thankfully, these rings do fit right between the rod and the cupboard, just fit. So you can actually just push everything back out of the way if we want.
And everything will tuck back in there nice and neat.
Yep. Like that. All the way back.
Okay, well, we'll finish putting in all these screws. Today we're going to be starting in on this area right here. In order to do that, I have to put in a few little rib nuts. But since it's been so long since I've done one of these, I actually have to go and watch one of our own videos to remind myself how to do it. Following the example of Outdoor Wanderlust and other YouTubers, I started building the bed frame using plus nuts, sometimes called cross nuts, to secure the wood to the van wall. There are a few tools available for installing plus nuts, but if you like to save money like me, you can just make your own tool using a configuration of a bolt, nut, washers, and wrenches.
This method is a little more time and energy consuming over using a rib nut tool, and you will most likely go through quite a few bolts and nuts in the process. But the trade-off is that this method is free, and if you know us, you know we like to keep our costs down. Using hanger bolts is a trick I learned by watching another YouTuber. It's a great way to take out the guesswork or endless measurements. It'll help you better mark where you'll need to drill your holes for the bolts.
So this is the area we're working on today. Starting on the other side of the van at the bottom. All these odd shapes that we have to deal with, try to figure out how to build around.
Odd shapes indeed. If you haven't heard us mention it before, there are what feels like endless bumps, dips, and protrusions to build in and around. The area around the slider door is no different. Because of the protrusion at the base of the back side of the door, I needed to build out the studs a bit so we could place a single finished piece across.
Now we have our studs to put our finished piece right here.
Next, we started working on the area above the slider door. As we have with other parts of the build, we spent a lot of time brainstorming, debating, and planning to try to find a solution that we both like and feel will be the best for us and our needs and tastes. If you're about to start your own van build and are a novice like we are, be prepared to spend a lot of time planning and thinking to figure out how you will execute each step. Before we finished this section, I used Havelock wool to make sure it was well insulated in the wall cavities.
As Audra was working on adding insulation to this area, I was busy, you guessed it, templating. I used the scribe method when cutting pieces to fit the contour, the crazy curves, and angles of the van. This is a method we have shown in previous episodes, and you'll see me doing it here more later in this one. To fill the gap between the body of the van and the larger front piece, I attached this thin piece of wood to the back larger piece at a 90-degree angle prior to putting it back in the van and attaching it permanently to the studs. Adding this piece worked out well to give it a clean, more finished look. I gave it a quick sanding and it was good to go.
Just finished putting this piece together, so that'll be a little ledge. Now the next thing I want to do is figure out where to put a receptacle. And I think we determined that we want to put it right about here, like so. So the next thing to do will be cut out a hole so this can slip in, fasten everything together. Once that's done and all buttoned up, start to move our way up towards the side of the door and move forward. And you can see there I have some cardboard templates, kind of where we want to put our studs, I guess you would call it, our nailers.
So Steve was smart. We're trying to figure out how we want to finish this space. He cut some cardboard pieces. We were thinking about maybe some shelving, maybe a cabinet in this corner, but we've decided we're going to finish the wall first. We're going to use pallet wood to match what we already have in our sleeping area. As you can see here, we chose to use standard plywood that we had left over for the front piece. A lot of people swear by using more expensive wood such as birch for all of their build. Personally, we don't find that necessary. We like to keep costs down whenever possible. There are certain spots that aren't as visible where we don't mind using a lower grade plywood, especially if you sand it well enough that it has a nice smooth finish. For this piece, we probably didn't sand it quite enough, so we may circle back and resand it more later. But it's also in a less noticeable spot, and we'll be storing our toilet chair there in front of it, so we'll see. You may notice that the outlet is off-white. We had actually thought it was white until it was up against other white materials in the van. We'll replace it later with an actual white outlet.
Next, I worked on creating a template for the side piece of this section. Scribing is such a useful method when building out a van. It really makes it easier to match all the curves of the van when cutting out materials. I highly recommend it.
So now it's my turn to figure out the measurements for the pallet wood that's going to go above the slider door. Steve has figured out where we're going to put the wood framing essentially. There's also going to be a piece right here, so I'm going to measure now and figure out a pattern for the pallet wood. So we're running out of daylight, but I think I have all the pieces set for above the slider door. Got them numbered so I know what order they go in. So far I think it's working pretty well. And Steve is busy we put a new piece.
It's probably super dark.
Well, we put a new wooden piece in to replace what we had before. We decided we wanted to be able to stain this to match our countertops. So there it is. I think it's time to call it quits. Hey, clean out these pieces.
I see the brush.
Alright, so I'm ready to start painting the pallet wood. I'm going to do it in the same technique I did for the rest of the walls. If you haven't seen that video already, go check it out. We'll put links in the description. What I've done already is a paint wash with dark brown paint, which is similar to what I also did for our ceiling wood. Another video you can check out. And next I'm going to do kind of a dry brush application of white paint to kind of make it look like a weathered, little bit of a beachy look.
For all of you aspiring van builders, just know that at every turn you're going to have some sort of challenge. Because nothing is straight, nothing is plumb, nothing is level. So be expecting challenges. Right now we are in the process of trying to figure out all the different angles and challenges of how to finish off this piece above the slider door. We're getting there, taking baby steps.
So I think this is the third or fourth day that I've been working on the pallet wood for the new section of wall. Started out diagramming and measuring and laying out potential pieces, then prepping with the darker brown paint like a stain, and then I finished with the white. And now we are in the process of putting all the pieces up. Here the top pieces are laid out in the right order. We are going to need to trim some of these, but we're going to wait to do that until we start putting the right corner up, and then we're going to work our way this way and then cut to fit around the blob that the transit has, and hopefully it'll all turn out all right. Working on your van in South Florida and the heat and sun, it's really nice to have some shade. That's where today's sponsor comes into play. Who am I kidding? It's actually a triangular sunshade that my dad gave us for Christmas. So we're going to try it out for the first time today. We'll see how it goes. There's 10. So let's make sure this all works again. It was really nice to see it all coming together as we started putting the pieces up. Part of the reason for choosing pallet wood is ease of access it creates for getting to components behind the finished pieces, such as wires or other materials, if it's necessary down the road. Also, it was free, and we like the resulting look when it's all finished. So we have to fit this odd shape now, these Ford Transit blobs, as they're called. We need to cut the pallet wood so it fits around it. Steve's working on a template.
It's a lot of guesswork at first. You fine-tune it as you go along. I don't know how well you can see, but I've gotten close enough with this template. So now what I do is I take a marker and I will scribe it out. Keep your marker right along the edge of what you're trying to cut up against. And it gives you a pretty good idea where to make your cut.
Alright, now we make yet another trip into the van. We go back and forth all day long.
Pretty good.
Now to finish this wall, we need to take this side ceiling piece down to trim it so the pallet wood can fit behind.
Do you kids remember what this is called?
Lines?
No. Anyone else?
Stripes?
No.
Racing stripes?
Called kerf cut.
Kerfing.
Kerfing. You make a bunch of cuts and then it makes the wood just that much more bendable.
If you missed our ceiling installation video, check it out. We show you how we installed this ceiling, and it's pretty much free other than the cost of paint and screws.
Well, it wasn't until we had this entire area above the slider door almost finished with the finished pieces that we realized we probably want to run electrical wire to this area in case we ever want to put a fan or a light or who knows what. So, as is typical with this build so far, is I had to take everything out so I could get access again to run this line, and it runs back to the back of the van to the fuse block, which then ties into the battery. So that's where I'm at with this process. I got the line in now. I've got enough slack for whatever potential we want to do in the future, and now got to put it all back together, hopefully for the last time, and we can move on to another part of the van.
We've seen many other van builds where the walls come up flush with the ceiling material. We made a decision for the wall material to go behind the ceiling material. This method makes it easier to get a clean finished edge because of the overlap. It also allows us to access wires and other materials in the ceiling if that ever becomes necessary.
And now I am trying to figure out this piece. Put a finished piece on this side. And of course, like everything else in the van, there's not a straight cut. There's always a challenge. The challenge with this one is going to be this corner here. This metal rounds off this way, so that's going to be quite a challenge. But for this edge, I simply took a piece of cardboard and a little homemade scribe, put it like this, and you just go down, and then you cut. So it's a nice.
Looks like fits pretty well.
So that's where we're at.
It's looking good.
One tiny baby step at a time.
While Steve worked on the finishing pieces, I filled in the screw holes.
Alright, so here we are working on this piece. I'm going to attach right here. I used the template to get this far, and this is what it looks like. All things considered, I'm pretty pleased with it. And I'd like to point out, to try to get this to sit in nice and tight in this corner, I had to really sand this down and chisel away. So now it sits in nice and tight.
We debated how to finish this edge. We decided that the best solution was to cut a piece that would tuck behind the bottom piece of pallet wood, hiding the bare metal underneath. This simple solution seems to be doing the trick.
So I'm just touching up the screw holes now and any places that we kind of dinged up when we were putting the pieces together. This is actually pretty nice to do. A nice little mindless task. It's a nice change from sitting in front of the computer using my brain to do work. So here is the finished wall. We started to add some decorative touches, such as this octopus from Hobby Lobby. On our last trip, Steve added this light switch cover. We still need to stain this piece and fill the holes, do some more sanding and a second coat of paint here. And I think we'll probably end up adding some shelves or storage up in this area, but overall, we're pretty happy with the result so far.
So we need to take this closet, what's it called?
Cabinet.
The joys of getting old.
It's bothering your knees.
No.
Alright, so now we're bringing the cabinet back in. So now it's my turn to figure out the pallet wood for above the slider opening. I'm recording, Steve. Try again.
So after quite a bit of a break since we've last built. So it's been quite a bit of time since we've last built anything in the van. So we're going to start tackling. It's been some time since we've last been working. It's been a little bit of time since we've been last. So it's been a little bit of time since we've last built anything in the van. So we're going to start tackling. It's been a little bit of time since we've last tackled anything in the van. So it's been a little bit of time since we've tackled anything with the van build. So today we're going to be tackling. So it's been a little bit of time since we've done. So it's been a bit.
So that's where today's sponsor comes in. Just kidding. Wait, it's really nice to have something to block the sun. So that's where today. Van in South Florida and the sun and heat, that's where a nice shade comes into play. That's where